One of the awesome things about GenerateBlocks effects panel is you can create some really cool hover effects for your button styles. So today I'm going to show you 4 button hover effects that I personally would use in websites I build and how to set them up in a global class so that you can reuse them over and over again. Alright, so I've set up a page here with 4 cards, and this symbolizes the 4 different styles of effects that I'm going to create on each of these buttons. The first one being float up, where when we hover on this button, it's going to hover up. Float right, so that when we hover on that, it will move to the right. Grow, so that again, when we hover on that button, this one's going to grow bigger in size. And then the float icon, we're going to add an icon on the right hand side of the text here, and when we hover on this button, we'll animate that icon so it floats to the right and kind of creates a cool effect to it. So taking a look at the first button, you'll see on each of these buttons, all I've done is add a button global style that I already have set up on my site. And essentially this is just dictating the padding, the typography settings, and background colors for it. So what we want to do though is create a new global class that we can apply to this button and create that transform effect for it to float up. So I'm going to go ahead and say add new global style, and I'm going to say button float up, and we'll hit create. We'll do that as a blank style. Alright, so since we want to create this effect on hover, we're going to go ahead and open up our selectors and choose hover and focus. And we're going to come down to the effects panel, and we'll go ahead and add a transform. Now, what I want is to add a -5 pixels of translate Y. So the Y-axis is your vertical line, right? Whether you want it to go up or down. And the X-axis is left and right. So I want this to go -5 pixels up because 5 pixels would push it down. So we'll say -5 pixels and then leave it on translate, because that's translate effect is going to just move it 5 pixels. We don't want to rotate it. We don't want to do perspective or scale or skew, just translate. So we'll go ahead and save that. And then what we need to do is go into the main selector of our global style and now add a transition, because we want this to take place smoothly. And so we're going to add a transition. We'll say about 0.35 seconds, and we'll say ease in out and say okay. And now we can go back. Now, but you'll notice that when we go ahead and hover on our button, nothing is actually happening yet. So if we save it, go ahead and save our new global style, come to the front end and refresh, you'll see the button is not doing anything. Well, this is because our button actually needs to be set to display inline block. So if we come to the main button, not in our global styles at all, we come to layout and choose inline block. We'll go ahead and hit save, and now come to the front end and refresh, and there you have it. So now you can see our button is floating up. So that display property is really important on your button. If you didn't want to set your button to display inline block, you could change that back to default, and within your container here, you could change your container to flex, and then of course change the flex layout to column and alignment to the left. And when we have our container set to flex, the button transform does take place. So again, we'll take a look on the front end, and you see it does float up. So what we can do, since we know that now about our button, we can go ahead and set up on all of 3 of these cards to set them to display flex and column and alignment to the left. So now we won't have that issue anymore as we build out the remaining effects. All right, so jumping into our second animation effect here for our buttons, and that is floating to the right. Just like we did on the first one, I'm going to create a new global style and we'll say button float right. We'll go ahead and hit create, start editing blank style. Again, go open our selectors and choose hover and focus. Under effects, we'll go to transform. Again, we're going to keep it on translate, and this time we're going to say 5 pixel translate X. And since we've got this set up with the flex box on the outside, we can now utilize the preview here inside the editor. So you'll see when I hover, it moves 5 pixels to the right. If I was to do -5 pixels, it would go to the left. So we want to make sure we keep a positive number there, whatever you choose. Go ahead and hit save on that, and because you see now without the transition it's a jarring effect, it just jumps 5 pixels and jumps back. We need to make sure and always go to the main selector and insert a transition. I think it did about 0.35, ease in out. So now when we hover on that, the transform takes place in a very much smoother fashion. Go ahead and save that. We'll save it again, come to our front end, and now you can see we've got our float right button. All right, the third button, we're gonna once again add a new global style class. We'll say button grow. Start editing the style and go to your hover and focus selector. Again, open that effects panel and click transform once again. Now this time we're going to say scale instead of translate. I'm going to say about 1.2. And as you can see, that's actually really big. So maybe we won't quite do that big. Maybe we do 1.05. And that does scale it up a little bit, not too dramatic where it's in your face. Of course, choose a number that suits your style. But I always lean towards more subtle rather than too jarring and interrupt the user interaction. So we'll go ahead and save that at 1.05. Jump back into our main selector on our button grow class. Create a new transition again. We want that to take place smoothly, so we'll say 0.35, ease in out. And now you can see as you hover on your button, it grows a little bit bigger. Let's go ahead and save that. Jump back into our front end once again, and you can see we've got a button that grows, a button that floats, and a button that goes to the right. All right, now last but not least, we've got the floating icon button effect that we're going to create. So when we jump into our button here, we need to go ahead and add the icon because an icon can't be specifically controlled within the global style. We need to select it and insert it on the main button here. So I'm going to insert a custom SVG. I've got an icon I'm going to grab from icons here that I already searched. Now we want the icon location to be after. And I'm going to go ahead and leave the icon color alone. I think it's fine for us. And what we need to do though is we want the icon to move to the right gradually on hover. And so I'm going to create a new global style and we'll say button icon or button float icon, just so it's consistent with our naming of our card. We'll say blank style. Now inside our button float icon global style, we need to create a selector that's going to target that icon specifically on hover and focus. So we're going to go ahead and come in here and say new, and I'm going to choose hover and focus. Then afterwards, space and add SVG. So this is going to target that SVG icon within our button. Go ahead and hit create. And now if we come on down to our effects, come to transform. Now because we want to translate that icon to the right, we need to do about 5 pixels or so positive on X. So now when we hover, you see that icon move to the right. Go ahead and hit the check mark to save that. Now we need to go ahead and, instead of adding that transition to our main selector, it's not going to work. We need to come in and once again add a new selector to just target the SVG itself. So then we'll come down to transition, say 0.35 seconds, ease in, out. And there you have it. Now that icon is hovering to the right smoothly, just like we wanted it. So we'll save that, come to our front end, and you can see our icon is now translating to the right. So the awesome thing about having all these set up in global classes now for those translates is if I decided, you know what, on this button, instead of growing, I want that button to actually float up. And once I swap out those global styles, now the button is going to float up. And if I wanted this button to now scale or grow, I just change it to the grow class, and there you have it. Now this button will grow. So you can apply this to any button throughout your site and use them as needed. And then if you ever wanted to change the style itself, maybe you wanted it to float a little bit higher or you want it to grow a little bit bigger, all you have to do is jump into your global style and change out the scale or transform translate effect that you have set up, and it'll take place across all buttons you have that global style applied. Alright, so I just showed you 4 different hover effect styles on buttons you can utilize in GenerateBlocks. Now there's definitely a lot more you can do with that effects panel, but as I mentioned, for design and user experience, you really want to keep these animations and transforms to a minimum so that it just adds to the overall elegance of the experience but doesn't deter or take away from it. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time.